special guest is Jack Paar. Ladies and gentlemen, Dick Cavett.
Please, I'm trying to remain humble. I guess you all... Oh, there's no camera there. I'm a little new in the business, folks. I guess you probably all know why we're here tonight. My only guest is Jack Paar, and to me, it's hard to believe that there was a time, and it will be hard for you to believe too, if you're maybe 20 and under, that there was only one talk show in television, and the man doing it was Jack Paar, and there has never been anyone quite like him before or since. I think he's the most intriguing personality this medium has ever seen. And he could be happy and sad and furious and contrite and tough and brave and sentimental and silly and serious and sometimes all in the same night. And he could make you feel all of those things too. Also working for him, as I did. And he once said that he was proud of the fact that the people who didn't watch the show didn't just watch it out of indifference. They couldn't stand him. He made an impression on anybody. And this is the first time he's been in front of a live audience in 4 years, which I find amazing. Here now, if you roll it, please, is a time when he was in front of a live audience some years back. Thought we'd take a look at that.
What happened to all that affection when I first came out here? What happened? I am, however, I have never been involved. Really, this is true, although many of you think that I have been, politically minded. I am not really. I have never been, on my word of honor, mixed up in any partisan politics on one side or the other. That's true. As a matter of fact, I feel very much like the little old lady in Maine who said, "I never vote, it only encourages them." Now, here's another one you may not like. I am a little nervous. I'm naturally a little nervous. But let me talk to you about it like I used to. President Johnson. Now, there's a man with enormous political skill and a great deal, I think, leadership and courage. However, speaking is not one of his strong points. I get the impression when the president speaks that he's speaking under our heads. I think he either speaks under our heads or else we duck. I don't know. But he talks so... his speeches are so ordinary, And I think the trouble is that his speechwriters used to work for a greeting card company. The president is here today to wish you luck in every way. And he speaks so slowly, so slowly, like everything is written on stone tablets, Now, on the other hand, he speaks so slowly that the Vatican correspondent from Rome, he's able to write the whole press conference down and translate it into Latin and still have time to work on a stained glass window at the same time. He's still doing it. Now, Hubert, see, some people like the fact that the president speaks slowly because that means there's less time for Hubert. Now, there's a rapid little rabbit, that Hubert, he just goes like this. And he's so loud, Hubert. You can tell he's from a farm country because he always sounds like he's speaking over a tractor. It's just... One of my favorite true stories was about William Jennings Bryan. This is a true story, who spoke in Washington before the election, a little long ago, of course. And he said, "My friends, I'm a poor man. And while I speak to you tonight, my little wife is sleeping down at an inn by the railroad station. But come November, that little lady will be sleeping in the White House. And a voice yelled out, well, she'll be sleeping with McKinley because he's going to win. Dogs have played a great part in our political history. Go back. Mr. Roosevelt's Fala. And then there was Mr. Nixon's Checkers. And then we had, Mr. Johnson's Beagles. You know, we had that problem there. But how about Millard Fillmore's Chihuahua? Do any of you remember that? See how quickly you forget? Or Calvin Coolidge, who didn't like noise or walking, and he had a stuffed Dalmatian. Did you know that? Anyhow, this is not new. In our history, we've had lots of trouble. For instance, did you know that General Grant caused a great stir in his day by trying to pick up a horse by its ears? While he was riding it, that's right. Of course, he drank a great deal, and you would too if you had to make out a report every day trying to spell Appomattox. You know, it's murder. It's surprising to me, in view of the amount of information that is available in the newspapers and in the magazines and on television, that people are so misinformed and misunderstand. The most curious thing is that I like it when Huntley and Brinkley say, and now we take you to Rome, and Irving R. Levine in the Vatican. People think we have a Jewish pope. I was at a home the other night, and Mr. Levine came on and says, there he is, Pope Irving the First. You know.
It's funny because Jack now is almost a recluse. Someone asked me who's hard to get on the show, and I said Paar and Garbo, but Garbo would be easier. And all of us remember, who watched all that time, Jack's feuds with columnists who were considered too dangerous to offend. The war with Ed Sullivan, which ended happily. The war with the NBC censorship department, which caused him to leave The Tonight Show and come back. And he has been described as a bull in his own china shop, a Presbyterian minister after 3 martinis, and 1 part genius and 2 parts chocolate fudge. He's a very nice man. He gave me my first job in television. I've been thinking a lot about that lately. Will you welcome, please? It's going to be a kick to hear his entrance music again in this time of night. For me, Mr. Jack Paar. I don't believe it.
Don't tell me Fidel Castro here's too.
No. We went to every expense we could, but we couldn't get him. Gee, it's good to see you here. It's amazing.
Look, several minutes older, I suppose, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Just as neurotic and nervous as I've always been.
Are you? Did you wake up this morning and wish you hadn't agreed to do this?
Yes.
Did you really?
Well, you see, I don't have a cause, and nearly everyone that comes on television today has a cause.
Right.
And I know you have to be very careful of it, but I decided to come here on behalf of the Eskimo Anti-Defamation League. I felt that was safe, because it's not true, friends, that all of the crime in this country is controlled by the Eskimos, and I just felt that now I can relax because I have done my little bit.
Okay.
But you know what are you going to talk on this show?
Oh, We'll find out, won't we?
No, I am nervous. What I thought was that I knew how nice you'd be to me. But then about the city of New York, I didn't know. But I feel that any city like New York, as hospitable as New York, that welcomes Charlie Chaplin back and Mayor John Lindsay surely would be gracious to me.
We love people who've been away a long time. There's no doubt about that. Does it feel odd to be being... Do you feel like you're in the wrong chair?
I don't think I've ever really been interviewed, or... That is not a good word, incidentally.
No, it isn't. I'm glad
you
you
don't interview people. You talk to people, you know.
Right.
Interviewing, that's another business.
Yeah, interview implies a series of news questions or something like that. I mean, but you did wake up this morning and wish, what do I need this for? I left it years ago because it was too tense, and now I'm doing it again.
Well, you see, I live a quiet life now, either in Florida, in the down the Keys, or I'm in Africa, or I live a quiet life in Westchester, and I'm not used to being around people. And people have forgotten me to a great extent. You know, they do. Yes? Oh,
right.
no.
We could hardly get anyone to
People
apply.
once or twice a week will say, didn't you used to be somebody? Or, I swear it's true.
Oh, no.
Or,
Oh, no.
aren't you a celebrity or something, you know? And I don't wear dark glasses anymore. I don't have to every day. I don't have to wear them. I just wear a simple veil, you know. And they either think I'm a nun or else I'm taking hornets out of the garage. But I just get by with that.
We'll give you a chance to calm down.
I'll be more talkative later, so don't you worry.
Oh, okay. You know about the number of messages we have, so I'll do this one right now, and we will return right after this message. Stay with me. I'm talking with Jack Paar. You know what seems funny? I was trying to remember the other day the details of the story of the night. I'll never forget it when you walked off the show.
Yes?
And it was about a joke that you had told.
Yes?
Now, anyone hearing that today, knowing what can be said and has been said on television, would think it must have been an awful,
After
raunchy
what I hear
story.
on some of the shows, I'm absolutely amazed.
Yeah.
That story I'm ashamed of for only one reason. It's a corny story. It's corny. I'm ashamed of it for that reason. But if I told it to you, if I could remember, which I really, honest to God, I don't. Where you'd have the walls would fall in with laughter. It's that funny. But it's but in context, you know, it's not literature. It's not the kind of thing I'd be most proud of. Yeah. That's greatly misunderstood about that story. I told the story in desperation because I had a bad night and things weren't going well, and I had it in my pocket. Now I'll tell you some things that will, if you remember the incident at all. The joke was given to me, written out, typed by an NBC executive. That was never said.
That never came out.
Well, I did. Why? Why blame some guy? After all, I'm to blame.
Yeah.
Now, the network has every right to take out what they wish. It's their network, and they're responsible under the FCC. But that was such an innocent, silly story. There was no reason to make a scene over that thing. Now, I'm already in trouble over something else I had done, where I'm being attacked by the press for being the first man to see Fidel Castro. And it's murder. The pressure I'm taking from men like Sokolsky and Pegler and really top-flight journalists hitting me day after day. And so the next day when I read the paper, I knew they had taken the joke out. That didn't concern me much. I thought it was silly, but okay. On the front page of a paper that's no longer in business, it said that Jack Paar did some obscenity last night. Now, that's when I wouldn't take it. You cannot say I've ever done obscene material. So I called the president of the National Broadcasting Company, Bob Kintner, who was a damn nice fellow, and I said, Bob, that was very bad. We've only been on the air so long. It's a big success. You're making a lot of money. And what I cannot stand is the word obscenity. He said, let me see. He went and looked at it, along with other executives. They called me back and said, oh, well, I said, but what are we going to do about it? Well, Jack, just, it's unimportant. Now, come on, you're a grown man. And I said, no. It's not obscene. I insist tonight we rerun it. We'll put the whole thing on, and that will stop it right there. Because if you say obscenity and never say what or anything, people think I've done all kinds of things. And they said, oh, no. I said, well, look, I'm leaving my home in my car now, and I'll be in there, so I'll do the show tonight. But unless that tape goes on, unless you give me permission to run it and have it racked up, I will not stay on the show. Oh, silly. First of all, they knew I was broke. I didn't have much, I hadn't worked long enough to have any money. I had no really backlog of money. By contract, I could have gone nowhere else. I could never have worked again. And so I went in and asked, are we going to run it? And they said, don't be silly. And I went to my secretary, who incidentally is now David Frost's secretary, and said, give me my cufflinks, because I had a whole office. I didn't have a fancy office like Johnny has now. I worked out of a duffel bag for a long time. But the only thing I cared about were some cufflinks. I didn't care about the clothes and stuff, because that was mostly given me anyhow. And Mitzi was the only one who knew that I meant it. So I went out and said so-and-so, and I left and was never coming back. Now, this thing about crying was so unfair, because I have a voice that I can't control. And when it gets to an emotional thing, even when I'm not crying, it gets to a point where it sounds like it. And those who thought I was weak or cried a lot, I think have learned better as years have gone on.
They have. Some of them, well, at that time, there were columnists that you attacked on the air.
You know they're all dead now?
I know.
Oh, I'm not proud of it. There are 5.
Yeah.
5 who hit me the worst, and they're all dead.
I wondered about
So
that.
watch it.
Okay.
You know, I love him. I really do love this boy. He's told a story in columns, and I already told it on the air about how we met, and it is all true. It's a very dramatic kind of little thing about I was going into my dressing room and going on the stage, and I met this little choir boy from Yale, you know. He was about that big, and he had this beautiful, deep... I never will forget your beautiful, idiosyncratic voice. It's the deepest. He has one of the loveliest voices in business. And he said he wanted to like to be a writer, and he loved television, and could he work with me? Would I be interested in that? And I didn't know, and there was nobody, just a kid. And I said, yeah. He said, well, could I come around and watch? And I said, yeah. And that's how he tells the story. And it's absolutely true. My version is that gypsies left you on my doorstep, but you know what? But
I never...
But did it ever occur to you when you tell that story, and you tell it a lot?
Yes.
Did it ever occur to you that that is the exact storyline of All About Eve? I'm Betty Davis, and there's Ann Baxter. There he is. See? Because you came in and you peeked and you learned to do it, and now look at you. You're winning Emmys, taking them from poor David Frost.
Oh, after all this time, you do this to me. I never thought of that.
Isn't it All About Eve, though, isn't it?
And that time you caught me looking in your mirror, it's true. Trying on your jacket. No, that is. But that version of the story you told is approximately it. You've left out the part where you said buzz off creep. But other than that, it was...
No, I don't think it is. I always liked you.
Notice you
I always felt sorry. You want to hear a lot of interesting things.
Oh, yes.
Well, see, this kid was from Yale, and my group, I had the finest staff that anyone could have in television. I had the best, and you joined it, and we didn't have any Yale men on our staff, and you were wearing that sweater all the time with Yale.
I never did.
You know, the sweater, boola boola.
Oh, no, I never.
You know, that burns the hell out of a lot of guys, you see.
This is not true.
Actually, it isn't true, but the fact that he's from Yale was. As a matter of fact, not only after he got a job, this pushy kid, he came to me and he said, do you want to know about another writer? And this is almost true. He'll tell it, but it's not. And I said, yeah. And he said, I know another guy from Yale. Well, I didn't know there was 2 guys from Yale, you see.
Who could write, eh?
Well, 3. No, 4. There's, what, you, Bill Buckley, God. Yeah.
Dear.
Did God go to Yale?
Well, they like to think so.
Well, Bill Buckley says he did.
Oh, well, he would know.
Yeah. Well,
yes. I'm sorry.
I was with Bill Buckley and God the other day at Sardi's. We were just talking.
That's almost the height of name dropping.
Well, yes, Bill interrupted God a great deal. He did. Yes, he did.
I never knew you to have such a fantasy life.
And then when he started speaking Greek to God, see, he thought that was his language.
Oh, no.
And God looked at me and went, you know. So,
I've never seen you this way.
See, now Jesus spoke Aramaic, which
Yes.
Bill doesn't know, see. Because he didn't speak Yiddish. He spoke Hebrew, a little Hebrew, not a lot, mostly Aramaic. And what am I talking about? Okay. So he says, another Yale guy. This part's true. So I said, well, yeah, we have two guys from Yale. What other show has that? Two guys from Yale. Oh. And we hired another guy, but he told me his name. He said, did you know David Lloyd? And I said, I know him very well. Actually, this part is about 3/4 true. David Lloyd was my next door neighbor. Does that sound possible? That a man would recommend a man who lived next door to me? You don't believe that, do you? I'm sorry. How much of it's true?
Well, not to, I wouldn't want to strain you by saying that it's entirely true. Yeah, that is 98% true.
Don't be frightened. I have no power anymore. But now, okay,
that isn't true.
So now we got these two Yale kids. And my staff froze a little bit, I must say. And they weren't always nice to this one. They were lovely guys, but, Yale and all those big words and everything. And so I used to worry about him because when they were cold to him. But that was silly because I'd say, I haven't seen Dick for a while. Where's Dick? Just before the show when I'm very nervous and incoherent, And they'd say, oh, don't worry about Dick. I said, where is he? Did someone hurt him? Is he... And you know where he'd be? In the Rainbow Room with Peter Ustinov, or one time I remember I thought, I wonder if they've driven you off. They were a little rude for a while.
Some of your staff.
A little. Isn't that true?
I always thought you were encouraging them to be.
No. And I'd see walking down the hall with Jack Benny, George Byrne.
Oh, now.
You always were with somebody important.
You make me seem like a pushy little aggressive, shall I go on?
No. But you had a lot of confidence. Confidence, you really had a lot of confidence.
Oh, well,
I admire that.
You know what it was? If I seemed to have confidence, it was because I was terrified of you.
Who were you?
I really was. I have never told you this, actually. But as long as it's truth-telling time here, Paar, I really was very scared of you.
Why? Tell me the truth now. Why? Because I was mean or what?
You have a kind of canine energy.
Canine?
Animal.
I told you about those big Yale words, didn't I?
Oh, big deal, 2 syllables. You have an animal energy that is a little scary. Now, you can't sense it because you can't see it, but people around you do it. I know the people on your staff, you before you go in there, you emanate this and there's a certain sense of danger about it that is what makes you so interesting on television. But backstage, it's very
hard to
It's a little scary.
Yeah. Well, I'm not loud or rude or mean or anything.
Oh, no. You're quite presentable and all that.
But I'm very...
True that just
Did he get one in? Did he get one in there? Did he get one in?
If I did, I'm going to take a message right now. We'll be right back. Stay where you are. Here we are, back with Jack Paar. Some of us around the office today were going over the list of people that you discovered on The Tonight Show. And there seemed to be more of that in those days when you were doing the show. And the list reads like a who's who of show business now. I can't think of all of them, but I just remember there were so many people I saw for the first time there. I think Nichols and May did their first appearance that way there when Mike Nichols and Lane May were a team.
And the most brilliant satirists I've ever seen. They're the only ones I've ever seen that work. That really worked. Satire really doesn't work too well on television. They're brilliant people.
And
this is I think my 2 favorites. Forgive me, Dick. Sure. And Jonathan Winters.
I'm here every night.
No, it's all right. Yeah, not for long from what I read. But anyhow, we're going to correct that.
You gave me my start. Now you're giving me my stop. I think that's terrible.
Jonathan Winters, I think, is in my view the greatest single pound-for-pound genius I've ever known.
Yes.
There's nothing to compare with Johnny Winters at his best. I mean, in my view. And you'll never really see the real show, which is backstage.
Oh, I know.
Any stagehand, any musician, anybody who's ever been around him, will, I doubt, see his likes again. It sounds like he's leaving the world, but I'm terribly enthused about him. Let me tell you some stories about, you say discover talent. I gave him opportunities and had enthusiasm for them. But there was Bob Newhart and help me, Phyllis Diller and the Smothers Brothers, Diane Carroll, Bill Cosby,
Phyllis Diller,
Carol Burnett.
Carol Burnett, right.
I can't think. Anyhow, let me tell you a story. There was a guy called me, and he said he just was at Charlton Heston's apartment, and that there was a little girl there who sang. I just had to put her on, so I found out who it was, and I called, and she wanted to go on. She was very young, and I saw her, and she was you couldn't help but love this child. She enormous eyes and wet hair. She was like a little wet sparrow, very vulnerable. And I called her mother, whom I knew, and I said, may she go on? And she said, no, not under her name. Only, you can put her on, Jack, but let her make it on her own. And if it works out, say who she is if you want. So we decided that we'd put her on a certain night, and we made up a name that went something like, I don't know, I think it was something I'm ad-libbing now, Yaju Langar. And so we put her on, and that night before, I got a phone call and said, this child broke her leg and is now had a cast up to her, in her hip. And I said, oh, dear, dear. Well, get somebody else. And he says, that's the problem. She's crying and wants to go on. I said, you mean in a wheelchair with a broken leg? A debut with a name like Aju Langar? You know, what? So we put her on. Now, when I got to the studio in the hallway, I saw her again, and she's in the wheelchair, and they're wheeling around. And now before the show, she decides, naturally, that she has to go to the ladies' room. Now, here's this youngster in a wheelchair with a leg like this, and men can't carry her in there, so women had to. And incidentally, women's lib, you don't do that very well. If Gloria Steinem wants to know what you don't lift each other good.
Oh,
see?
I didn't know that's what you meant.
So they had a lifter. I assume this, just because I'm outside, but there's women, secretaries are all trying to lift this child off of a wheelchair on into the commode, you know, okay, that word, you understand. At which point I hear a tremendous scream. Ah! You know. And I said, my God, what happened to her now? Well, as they were lifting her off from the wheelchair to the little thing, anywhere, and it was magic. Who was it? Yeah. You heard it. Liza Minnelli. It was Judy Garland's daughter, right. Liza Minnelli.
Diju Langar. You reversed the syllables of her name. That's what it was. Yeah.
What a talent this kid has become. Did you see Cabaret?
Yeah.
Great.
Stupendous. But I remember, it's so funny to think that we saw those people new then. I mean, the impact of seeing Jonathan Winters.
One time, the first time.
Didn't even seem like a complete sentence.
You mustn't interrupt, kid. There was this time when we went to California. Now, had you been on a jet before?
No, I don't think I had. No, I always took the train back from Nebraska.
Well, we had first-class jet seats. Did you go? You were in first class, weren't you? Not everybody got first class. And we went to California.
Yeah. Well,
all right.
First time with you. Yeah.
Yes. And you came back one afternoon, all starry-eyed. You know, the nice thing about Dick is he's never lost his innocence, really.
What?
Well, that isn't called innocence, which you're just making
I see. Okay.
You've lost that, I assume, but
you'll be the first to know.
But I mean real innocence. A big star. I never saw anybody. No, he's not a silly Bobby Sox kind of fan. He's quietly just. And you came back, and you, not tears in your eyes or anything, but you really were starry-eyed. You had been to the shrine. You had been to Lourdes. You had been to St. Patrick's or St. Peter's. You know where you actually were? I'll stun you now. You had met your hero.
Any idea what you're going to say?
Stan Laurel. You don't remember when you came back?
That's right, I did. And
he worshipped Stan Laurel, and Stan Laurel, well, you know, at the end of his life was a...
That's right. And you wanted to hear about it, and we went downstairs and talked about it in that basement.
Well, you were so thrilled. You really were so nice to Stan Laurel. You used to take him presents.
Yeah, I used to go out and visit him. And when I was telling you this, you used to... you said, let's do something for him. And we did. We got... he wouldn't come on, but I wrote a little introduction, and then you came out and you talked about him for a while. And a lot of the people assumed that he was dead, you know, as you began to talk about him. A lot of people did not know that Laurel Hardy was dead, but they didn't know Laurel's life. And you talked about him, and then we put a picture of him up on the screen, and you said this we thought people ought to know that he was in an apartment about 3 miles from here and watching the show that night.
There was something nice about
he
you.
was so touched by that.
The other day, you said that they found you standing outside in a line to see Charlie Chaplin, and someone asked, "What are you doing here? He's a star." And you said, "I'll never get the chance maybe to see him again." Did you say that?
Yeah, it was.
I hope you did, because it was a very nice thing to say.
Yeah, it was funnier at the time.
Well,
yeah, it was one of those things where somebody asked me, a press person asked me that, and I thought, what explanation do you need for wanting to see Chaplin once? Do you feel that?
I remember the night he's did it again. The night that he had Noel Coward on the show, and London Fontanne.
Yeah.
That might have been, of all the shows ever done of this type, the best ever done. I happen to have it on tape. I tape things at night sometimes because I don't stay up late, kid. And I see him in the morning. I see you at 7:30 in the morning. Why
you have a home
are you
tape.
motioning?
You have a home
Why are you
tape.
motioning?
No, that's just a gesture I picked
Commercials.
up. No, you have a home tape machine.
Yeah. Are you ashamed of doing commercials? I mean, do you get nervous about it or feel self-conscious about it?
Yeah.
Do you? Let me tell you an allegory. 1,000 years before Christ in Greece, there was prostitutes. And they used to walk down the streets of Athens, and on their heel they had an indentation. This is true.
Mm-hmm.
And as they walked in the sand, it left a mark. And they found out recently what that mark meant. And these prostitutes walking around the sand, the mark said, "Follow me."
Is that right? That's true.
Which makes advertising the second oldest profession in the world.
Well, and here's some of it. Your carpet needs more than a cushion under it. It needs a foundation. Listen, I'm so glad you told me that. Before we find out if this Sears Craftsman Eager One will start before our live audience, there's something you ought to know. It has extra large wheels for easy rolling, simple height adjustment levers, and something new, the Craftsman self-cleaning housing. That helps prevent thick, moist grass from and stopping the mower. But most important, the Eager One is a bigger engine now. Even so, it's still a low-compression engine with plenty of reserve power and a totally different carburation system that needs no adjusting, so it starts easy and keeps starting easy. Now, while it doesn't always start on the first pull, it does often enough that I'm going to give it a try right now. Are you ready, live audience? Only Craftsman mowers are powered by the Eager One. They start, cut grass, and last, and they're sold only at Sears.
Are we off now?
No, we're on now.
Don't they teach reading at Yale?
I was so afraid I was going to make a mistake with you sitting.
That's a good one. I have a snowplow that is really, really gay. It not only doesn't go, when it snows, it just kind of shivers, It's the most effeminate snowplow I have ever seen in my life. I cannot get it outside.
It doesn't. It's not made by the same company, probably.
No, it isn't at all. That is the best one. What is that one?
That's Sears.
It's a beautiful looking machine.
Yeah. I think maybe you'll get one.
Yeah.
I want you to have that one.
What do you want to know now?
I was going to. There's so many things. Can you trace back where the feud started that you mentioned earlier with those people, those columnists? What did they do that got under your skin?
What columnists?
The ones that you...
Oh, the ones.
When you were picking at you is what I'm trying to say.
Oh.
And can you trace back what they did to irritate you so...
You mean the columnists?
Yeah.
Well, now they're dead. First of all, they're dead. So I'd rather not go into it.
Sure.
You want to tell my side of it? I mean, what do you want me to do?
I just wondered what it was.
I thought they were unfair and untruthful, and they overdid it. And usually those feuds were not my feuds.
Yeah.
For instance, I have to mention his name, and I will do this straight and with the respect the dead deserve. Walter Winchell's argument with me was not really with me. It started with Elsa Maxwell, who worked on his own newspaper. They did not like each other. Most of the people who worked on that newspaper had their own feuds. Dorothy Kilgallen couldn't stand Jack O'Brien. Jack O'Brien hates Dorothy Kilgallen. I mean, really hated each other. Maxwell hated Winchell. And see, it was all in that Hearst group. And I got caught in because they'd come on my show and began to blast away. So they weren't allowed to mention in their papers their own fellow columnists, so they all took it out on me, and that's how that. And then they got very, very rough over Castro and over a lot of things that were never true. And then they attacked my family. Then they'd mention my daughter, and it got too rough. But
and didn't people warn you that they
forget? You see, they forgot because you say the what is the motto? What is the thing you say? You say that never attack the press. It goes to press every night.
That's right.
But so did I.
And that's the first time that anyone
I was
could
there an hour
answer.
and 45 minutes. We did 15 minutes more. It was an hour and 45 in those days, and it was live.
Yeah.
The first 2 years were live from the Hudson Theater with all those winos. Oh, it was terrible. Really, you feared just going to work, and then you had those people with the bottles, They didn't all drink, but there was a lot of fruit flies around their heads, I can tell you that. And they'd come in there, and here I am broke, trying to make a living, and you had these people in the audience half loaded. And it was in the bad section over there. It's now a pornographic place, I believe.
Yeah,
or they
theater
show
now
dirty movies or something.
Dirty movies.
Well, that's what has happened to it.
But you always, people would advise you were saying.
Most of the feuds weren't my fault, I mean, I'll tell you about another feud. Vidal and Vidal, what's his name?
Vidal and Buckley?
Gore Vidal, yes. And William Buckley Jr. Now, you see, William Buckley Jr., like the whooping crane, should be preserved in this country. He's really one of our great natural assets. He truly is a man. He's a literate man. He's a witty man. And I tried to like him, but he insists that it's impossible, you see, so I've given him up. Now, Vidal, on the other hand, is the most charming guy, as Buckley is. They're both charming guys and witty, and I wish I could have gotten along with both of them. They hate each other. So first Vidal comes on and says something about Buckley. The next night we asked Buckley on, whom I didn't know, but it was only fair. And then it went back and forth, and it got awfully rough. But they're both extremely talented men. I saw Vidal the other day on the morning show, and he looks awfully matronly. And he's rather bitter. Something about this play he's got going now has had bad reviews, and he's gotten bitter, and I really felt sorry for him. He's a man, a very gifted man. Now, on the other hand, Buckley has never let failure go to his head. That is the nicest thing you can think about him. He ran for mayor, and he lost. It didn't matter. He's just as charming and funny as ever, but I never could seem to make friends with him. And whenever he mentions me, not lately, but a year ago or so, it's always some mean thing. And it's a shame because I give him... Did you ever see him debate at the Cambridge Union? What do you call it?
No, I saw him debate somewhere else one time.
Well, I saw him debate James Baldwin. And the man is absolutely one of the most brilliant thinking men on his feet. And then I saw him, he won the debate when he debated John, what's his name? Galbraith.
Galbraith? Right?
Yeah. What's his name? Henry? What's his name? What's his name? The tall, skinny guy.
Yeah,
John
Kenneth Galbraith.
Yeah. He's brilliant, yeah. But I had nothing to do with that. I mean, those feuds started on the show, and I was caught up in them. I probably had some of my own, but I forget what they were, really, to tell you the truth.
I'd forgotten that you had also discovered Buckley and Vidal as an act.
Well...
that's amazing.
Yeah.
When we come back, I'd love to hear something about your Army career, because it's kind of a legend about you and when it was then.
I mean, that I won the Second World War? I think it's highly exaggerated.
I'm glad. We'll be right back after this message. The Keystone Everflash is now available on camera counters everywhere. Lead out. Jack,
Are we on now?
yeah,
Oh.
you were in World War II.
You did that one well.
Oh, good, thank you. You were, I feel like I'm being graded here. You were in World War II, and there were...
The big one.
Right, and there was a...
That's all the guys say.
They always say, I was in the big one.
Yeah.
They didn't know this one was going to be as long as it was when they started saying that. There was an old...
This one is the worst one. This war is worse, yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever think about the difference, how you'd feel in this one as opposed to that one?
I only go every other war. I always tell them, I told them. I only go every other war. I miss this one.
Well, I found an old Esquire article about you, and it talked about your legendary entertaining the troops over there, and that's how you were their favorite because of your irreverence and the fact that you were willing to risk your your own neck for some of the things you said.
I was only court-martialed once.
What was that about?
Well, not actually court-martialed, but I wouldn't be proud of that, would I? I was reduced in rank.
What had you done?
Well, I'll tell you what I did. I was an infantry soldier. I was not a USO performer. I was 28 months in the South Pacific, from Guadalcanal up. And but I was assigned to a show, and I wrote the show, and we began to travel, and we were practically relieved of duty, except when things were tough. We used to have to unload ships, do guard duty. But my main function was to entertain and to visit the wounded. And that's what I did in the war. Well, one night I remember what got me into trouble is it was in Guadalcanal, and I walked on a stage, and there were, you can't believe, would you believe that there were at one time 80 or 90 theaters on Guadalcanal that I could actually play a different audience every night for 3 months?
No,
you don't think of it
incredible.
that way, do you? Yeah. It's not even on the map anymore. I went there not long ago. It's called Honiara. But anyhow, so I went on the stage, and there was 5,000 men waiting, and I was known as the kind of the Bill Malden of the Pacific, in that I expressed the anger at officers. The fact that I got away with it is to the great credit of the Army and to the officers who understood what I tried to do was to make the men laugh about things that concerned them. And always talking about girls, because we didn't see any girls for something like 22 months at one point.
Yeah.
You had to talk about things which they dealt with every day. So this is a special case. They had brought back the wounded in the 1st Marine Division, and these men, and this is hard to say, because some of these men didn't have legs, and they were wheeled out. Now, I don't know at what point you go into shock after you've lost your leg. It isn't necessarily immediately or within days. It must come later, because I actually had men that were wheeled out that had maybe 2-3 days amputation. And so I went out on the stage, and I was told I couldn't go on because the Admiral hadn't come, that some USO girls had come into town, and they were up in the hut. And in this, I'm an Army man, but this was a Navy area, and I was under their command, and they said to me, you cannot do the show until the Admiral is piped in. Piped in. They had to blow a silly thing, and everybody stood up. Stood up. Some men couldn't stand up. And I got sore. So I'm only a sergeant, and I waited something like 40 minutes. These guys are, you know how they do.
Yeah.
And I got madder and madder. The bugles go off. In comes the Admiral with the broads. And they walk up, and I thought, what an insult. So I went out, and then I started, and I went after them. And I'd forgotten he was an Admiral. And I said, gentlemen, the reason the show did not start tonight was because we had to wait until this Admiral came in. He just piped him in. I said, the reason is that there are some USO girls here who came to do the Dance of the Virgins. But they've been with the Admiral, and they've broken their contract. And I was arrested for that.
I think we can. we will be back after
Talk
this
about
message.
freedom of speech. How about that?
You know, do you have any?
Marvelous theme. I remember all that stuff.
Yeah, that used to be. That was
Trying to
sung-
break me up, huh?
I'm always thinking of things that you said at some point that you've probably forgotten, but you're certainly.
When you were writing for me, you must have been writing what I was saying now.
No, it's the ones that weren't written that were so impressive that you would
What
come
did I
with
do?
so fast. I remember one night, a very fat comedian said at some point, in all seriousness, you know, my wife's an acrobat, and you said she'd have to be. And it was just at the speed that I just said it, and it was.
I don't
You don't even
remember.
remember that, do you? The laugh went on for several minutes. Are you still?
Are you happy doing this show?
At the moment, or in general? Or?
Yeah. Are you happy?
Some of the time. Some of the time I really enjoy it.
It's tough.
It's funny, just as I came back from vacation last time, which I'd been on too long without a vacation up to that point, I thought, gee, it's really great to be doing a show like this, and I can really enjoy it. And then I had a call from my agent about the fact that, well, I don't want to get into it.
I know.
Did you worry about
There
ratings
was a
then?
happier time, you see. What's happened to the executives in television, this is not an attack on them. Most of them are very decent guys, nice guys, trying hard. I don't know of one executive ever who said, we have to do a show for a 12-year-old mind. I never met such a man. They've all tried to do better. The truth is that the public, the mass audience, accepts the lesser. Look at the shows that have gone off the air. And of course, they're always giving advice. You say, like, your agent tells you that. There was a time when it was just, in my day, or in the earlier days, where it was just talent and management. Now you have a business manager, and you have an agent, and you probably have a broker, and then you have a lawyer to watch all them. Now we move to the network, and you have a vice president in charge of programming. Then you have a media analyst, another vice president. Then you have public relations, and they're all telling you what to do. And it's very, very difficult, Dick.
Yeah.
There's another story, an allegory I want to tell you. There were once two tomcats, and they were running, and they jumped over a fence, and the one little tomcat got hung up on the barbed wire at the top and tore his tummy and his reproductive parts, and he fell to the ground. And he looked at the other tomcat, and he said, I was the greatest lover of all the tomcats. I was the best there ever was. Now look at me. And the other guy said, well, now you can always become a consultant. This is a very, very tough business. The ratings are very, very difficult.
Were they as conscious of them always from the start?
Always.
Yeah.
Would you believe it? A couple of weeks ago, I went to a barber shop, and there's a guy up in where I live, an Italian guy who was a barber shop that I take a great interest in. He's been very successful. It's just a barber shop, but he's now doing all kinds. He's got a Cadillac, and got a swimming pool. A barber, marvelous, great country. So he said to me, he said, we're cutting more hairs now than anybody else in Westchester. And I wondered, it sounds like a rating. I said, Phil, how do you know you're cutting more hair than any... How would a barber know that? Sounds like my business. He said, I got the guy to count the towels. There's a guy that goes around delivering towels and all those... And for each haircut, they put a towel on and throw it down, and if you get the guy that counts the towels... So in a sense, the barbers are rating each other, and they have to fight the towel system, you see. But... this kind of thing is built into the free enterprise system, which is what we've all benefited. Otherwise, I'd be in the tire business or something. So I'm not against it, except it's awfully cruel sometimes, ratings.
Yeah, particularly...
Violence is what they want. Violence. Well, now we know what violence is. We've had enough violence in this country. And I think we have too damn much on television. And I think... In motion pictures, it's absolutely, now you can use the word obscene, the violence that's going on. Some of them even winning Academy Awards. In my home, on my word of honor, my daughter actually sees pictures and screens them from me, whether I should go or not, because I get so damn mad. But...
whether an adult is fit...
is fit to watch some of this.
Yeah.
Like I was thinking violence in television. I was going to take this Lassie series and redo it with a Doberman Pinscher.
Just, probably...
the gay liberation called the Godmother. Would that be anything
Probably not.
Maybe not, okay.
But what's annoying about the rating system is when you feel that it doesn't measure a certain number of people, and that's my conviction. But
there's 1,200 homes in the country that measure the entire thing. And you said a funny thing, or a shocking thing. Now, at this hour, naturally, do you know what time you're on in Florida, where I live?
Don't tell me.
1:15 is when his show starts. 1:15 in the morning. Well, what kind of a noise can you get at 1:15 in the morning? That's when you're on in Florida.
That's terrific. A few insomniacs.
Yeah, well, I didn't mean to tell you that, kid, but it's gonna leak out. It gets around,
We love you, even if you're up late. find that you run into people, I know you hate parties, or you used to hate parties, and I think I sort of inherited that from working with you, but I usually do too. But do you ever run into the kind of person at a party who makes a point of being unimpressed with you because you're in some business where you're famous, or
Yeah, I suppose that happens.
the guy who...
I don't go to parties. But what happened to you now? I know you
Well,
must...
I know one that you don't remember that happened to you, but someone luckily overheard it.
What? Oh,
There was a
dear.
guy
What
at a
did he
party
do?
you went to, and he said to you, you know, I never saw your show once when you were on television. And you said, well, keep it up. When you die, that may be your only distinction. You don't even remember these things. You need a box.
I don't go to parties. I don't come to New York very often. I don't go to parties. I come to two people. I have two old friends, and my friends are very much the same as before any success I may have had. Sidney Carroll, the war correspondent, who wrote the piece in Esquire that you quoted, still my closest friend, and his wife. And Al Hirschfeld, the artist in the New York Times who draws those sensational, theatrical, They're my closest friends, and I come in town. But my wife, my wife is very sociable and very lovely and loves people. I don't not love people. I just don't need people. I'm happy alone.
You were a loner as a kid, I read once. I don't know if it's true or not.
I was sick as a kid. I had tuberculosis and a terrible stutter, and I was not in great demand. I went to the 10th grade, you know.
That's right. And didn't you take a couple night courses at Western Reserves?
No, I learned a lot of things from you. And you're the only man I knew that, besides myself, that read the New Statesman, the Spectator, the London Observer. I read those, and I couldn't talk to anybody. But when you came on my staff, I learned that you used to bring me magazines to read.
I thought you were the one who was reading those.
No, I had read them, but I had no one to talk to about the things that I was interested in. But you began to bring me new magazines. I can recall. I have total recall. It's frightening. Except when I'm nervous, and I can't think of a damn thing to say. Like now, I'll go on endlessly, you know. What a pity. How long does this show run?
You won't, because but it's interesting. I think you're probably better educated.
What's a show called A Week with Jack Paar?
Would you come back night after night?
No. It's just when I'm relaxed, I can talk, and I'm very funny in the living room. But I'm scared of audiences.
There's no.
You wouldn't believe that, but I'm scared to death.
There's no trace of a stammer anymore. How did you cure yourself?
If I can read well, when I narrate, I have rather interesting voice, and I read and narrate all my stuff, you know, all the African stuff I've done. I narrate and never. But when I talk and think at the same time, I stutter. I like to think it's because I think faster than I speak, but they say maybe not. It's the other way around, which isn't... What do you mean?
And that was your friend who said yes.
Yes.
We have to take a message. We'll be right back. Jack, you know, when they interview you and you're doing this kind of job, they always say, have you had your most embarrassing moment? And I don't tend to remember things in those categories, so I can't ever answer those questions.
So many
very well.
embarrassing moments.
Yeah.
One is quite long, but really embarrassing. How long would you have? Maybe I'll...
8 minutes.
Embarrassing moment. I gave a cigar to a man once because I recognized him, and he recognized me, and he smiled at me, and I recognized the face, and I was nervous again and had a few drinks. And I saw this man. It was in Joe's Stone Crab down in Florida, my favorite restaurant, and I'm sitting there, and I see this man. I know he's famous, and half didn't think. And I saw him take out a little cigar, little dinky cigar. Well, you know that cigars, I smoke the very good cigars. I only smoke 2 or 3 a day, have all my life. Never seen me on the air with a cigar, but I do. But the best, you know, and there's vintage cigars like wines. I have the best. I gave this man, when I saw him, he was a famous man, and I knew, but I didn't think, and I went over and I said, sir, would you take this? And I gave him, and I gave the other friend with him a cigar. They were Havana cigars, the very best. And he lit it, and he smiled. You know who that was? J. Edgar Hoover. J. Edgar Hoover.
And you didn't realize at the time?
It was one of those things you want to do something nice, you simple, you smile. And I gave him a Havana cigar. Oh, dear God.
Havana. There's a story of your meeting President Eisenhower, or as he was then, I guess, General Eisenhower, and I've never known...
No, he was president.
Oh, was it when he was president?
Well, I spoke at a dinner one night, and I was with a lot of important movie stars. They were, and I spoke, and then as a favor, they came back and they said, the president wants to meet all of you individually, or in a line rather, and be at a certain time and stand there because of the security and Secret Service and all. And he was coming, and it was a great thrill to me, old Ike. And he came, went to each one. I can't think, Cornell Wilde. I can't remember the stars. They were very big stars in those days, and I wasn't not much at all. And so he came to me, but as he came to me, they flashed a newspaper picture over my head, which blinded the general, and the president, and he couldn't see. And as he grabbed my hand, my big thrill, he said, "How nice to meet you, Conrad Nagel."
It's those thrills that make it worth it, I guess.
I was down in Florida, again, at the Key Biscayne Hotel, staying there, and I've known Richard Nixon a long time. And when my daughter was young, about the same age as Julie, Tricia, and I've known him a long, long time, and I felt sorry for him. He had just lost the election, and I mean, because he lost. I feel sorry for anybody who loses anything. If I voted, incidentally, I don't vote, as you know, but I would go in and say, God bless both of you, you know, because I just don't. Well, politics isn't the thing that I want to get mixed up in.
You don't vote?
No, I don't.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but anyhow, I felt sorry. The man was just felt very badly, and I had a phone call from NBC at that moment. I was pretty hot then with NBC, and they wanted something, and it was Bob Kentner, the president of NBC, and I ended up on the phone because Kentner wanted something from me, and I ended up trying to get Richard Nixon a job. Now, that sounds awful silly and vain, but honest to God, I did, because someone had told me that he would probably be interested in maybe a once-a-week, 15-minute news kind of an analysis show. This was after the election with President Kennedy. And it does sound silly.
And he was turned down?
Well, Bob Kennedy says, I'll think about it. Oh. But I was saying, I said, I'm having breakfast with him right now, and why don't you?
That's very
Then
nice.
one time, then I saw him again. He had just lost again. He lost to Pat Brown.
Uh-huh.
And I'll just make this real quick. He lost to Pat Brown. So I go down to the Bahamas with Miriam and Randy, and we go down there, and there's Richard Nixon with the kids again. And, you know, his kids are marvelous kids. And so he really was sad. Oh, God, he was sad. And he was no fun. I got to tell you, you were no fun. So, I felt sorry, so I said to him, I used to call him Mr. Vice President, because he was, you know.
Yes.
And there was a while we called him Dick, but I thought that at this time he's so low, I'll call him Mr. Vice President. So I said, can I take the kids tonight? So what happened was, I took Randy, Tricia, and Julie, what they call over the hill in Nassau, to the black section where they have wild dancing, I mean, crazy, limbo, and boom, boom, and crazy stuff. I thought that would make the kids feel nice, you know, because they were so depressed. We get there, and it's a black nightclub entertainer who, a local Bahamian, but he must have recognized me, and he comes over, and he grabs a little blonde girl next to me, and he takes her out on the floor, thinking it's Randy, and this Tricia, you know, was very quiet. Tricia has now come out a bit, but she was very like this. Tricia went into the wildest bumping thing I ever saw in my life. She won the limbo, you know, you under a stick?
Yeah.
They gave her like a heathen idol. They gave this to her. Every word's true. They gave her this idol as the wildest dancer in the Bahamas. This quiet little Tricia. And she was so proud of it. Here, this kid had this, like, totem pole going back, and she said, who's going to tell Daddy? And the next morning at breakfast, I had to tell Daddy about this idol that his daughter won. The big thing was, the joke, I always leave the joke out. The joke is, the MC thought it was Randy. You see, a blonde girl next to me. It wasn't. And when he heard it was the vice president's daughter, it was, you know, it could have been. Yeah. If this is cooling off, I'll stay longer.
We must take a message. That's the only problem. We'll be right back.
Judy.
That was you and Judy Garland.
Yeah. Yeah, she was, you know, about Judy, Liza tries to tell us and people won't believe it. The truth is, Judy was never a tragic figure. The public made her tragic. She was laughing all the time at all of us.
I know.
That's
I
the
believe
truth.
that. I mean, I don't know, but I met her once. I got that impression.
That throb in her voice, that emotion and everything, and then the tragedies that she went through. But the point was, Judy was laughing all the time secretly. I was with her one day when she lost her house, her car, and we had a few drinks. And Judy was not a big drinker, but constant. It was like Blue Nun wine, you know, that's not powerful stuff, you know, but we drank and we were together from 11 in the morning. She lost her house, her car. I knew I had to get her back to her home because the next day, Judy was going to start what could have helped her a great deal. It was called Valley of the Dolls, I believe it was. Was there one or two of those? Anyhow, in one of those, she had a part, you know, and Judy wasn't in great demand in pictures at that time. And I knew I had to get her home. And I couldn't make her go home. They found her sleeping on a pool table at 20th Century Fox.
Oh, gee.
And she lost the picture. They kicked her out of the picture when she really needed it.
Something kept her going.
A day later, she's laughing and telling me about it. Yeah. She was very, very funny. You'll never know how funny she could be. Very sophisticated sense of humor. Yeah.
Gee, this is going so fast, and we're almost out of time. I must ask you this, Jack, because you talk about, you left television a couple of times, and you said you don't like to do it, and you don't need the pressure and all. And there are rumors that all the networks have tried to lure you back. I've heard on good authority that they all have. And you must like it. I mean, you have such a gift for this and for talking and hearing people react to you. How can you... You must want to come back somehow, somewhere.
Would you want to return to the scene of an accident?
Well,
what I really want to do was to travel and show strange parts of the world. I'm very interested, as you are, in ecology and animals. Although everyone comes on there in favor of ecology, people who don't know what it means. All these movie actors come on talking about ecology.
That's right.
I told my daughter the other day, she's very interested in ecology, and she used to have signs and things for ecology. I said, first learn to make your own bed, then we'll talk about, you know, pollution and everything. Just make your own bed, kid, and then we'll start talking. But about coming back, so what I want to do, is like I did a show in Africa last week, or was it 10 days ago? I worked a year on it. It was no smashing rating, because I had maybe it wasn't a good show, but the rating isn't out yet. But I know it won't be good because we were preempted along the whole West Coast because of the Massachusetts and Pennsylvania primary. Well, see, that shows in the rating. But the one I did 2 years ago in Africa was the #1 show in the Nielsen. The only time I've ever been #1. The answer, do I want to come back? No, I have no desire to come back.
But you must have a certain amount of vanity. Obviously you do. You like to...
I have enough vanity to come here tonight. Yeah. I suppose if that's what you mean, vanity.
I mean, the show business...
I was never as conceited as people let on, because it's part of my act.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you get laughs when you talk about being the king and all. That's funny, isn't it? The king of what am I the king? I'm the Charles de Gaulle of comedy. Now, isn't that enough?
Who do you inherit your temperament from, whatever you define it as? I've never known anybody like you.
My mother is a darling woman, very attractive and very, very amusing, but very autocratic. She's a cross between Spring Byington and Otto Preminger, my mother. And she does some terribly funny things. You know the story about? See, I'm always worried about I'm going to run into your time. Okay, I'll tell you quick.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Well, one time I was broke. Again, I was broke. No job, nothing. A baby born, no money. Just lost a picture with Marilyn Monroe. Out, I was broke. And I got a job at Columbia, CBS, called The Morning Show. I was replacing a man called, well, you know him, Walter Cronkite. Can you imagine me replacing Walter Cronkite? But listen, he had bad days too. So I went in and I called my mother and I said, hey, Mom, geez, don't worry. I've got a job. The Morning Show on CBS. I was opposite the Garraway Show. And she said, oh, no, not that. She says, Dad and I just love that Walter Cronkite. And I said, Mom, it's a job. So I went on, and I was on about 3-4 weeks, and we were doing, you know, quite well, doing good and everything. And I liked Walter, but I didn't know him too well. So when I'd come up to my office from the Grand Central Station, there'd be a big bulletin board, enormous board, and say, Cronkite Paar. And crazy executives at CBS were keeping track of what the letters said. Like, we like Cronkite, you never should have put Paar on, or we like Paar, and then they'd put it up there. I was against it because I thought it was bad morale for the... Well, who wants to be insulted every month when you look at the thing and your staff comes in? It's very stupid. If they wanted, why not keep Cronkite? But anyhow, these tolls were coming, and I was doing all right, and I walked up one day from doing we did a 3-hour live show every day because there was no tape then. You did from 7 until 9, and then a repeat for the West Coast. And I come up just really beat, you know, and I saw... The secretary, she says, I don't know what to do about this, to the producer, Ted Fetter. She said, I don't know what to do. He said, well, what is it? She said, I got to mark it on the board. Well, what does it say? He says, it says, we miss Walter Cronkite. He says, well, it's for Cronkite. She says, it's from Jack Paar's mother.
Oh, no. Do you speak to this woman? We have to take a message. We'll be right back. Sorry.
Mrs. Roosevelt.
Oh, yes.
Mrs. Roosevelt. Yeah.
It's amazing how these memories go back. We're almost completely out of time. You seem to attract trouble. I don't know why. I was thinking of when the time you were on with Elsa Maxwell and you pointed down and told her that her stockings were rolling down.
I said they were wrinkled.
Wrinkled, yes.
And she says, I'm not wearing any.
We're out of time, Jack. It's been a great thrill to have you here, and nostalgic and wonderful and sentimental, and I just think you're great. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for allowing me.